everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, that is Caleb, and today we're breaking down, predicting this Nebraska-Indiana game, and it truly is going to define the rest of this Nebraska football season, and so it's going to be a wild one with a lot to talk about, heading into a big primetime night game here in Memorial Stadium. Caleb, how you doing?
Yo, I'm doing well. The bye week was good, I guess.
Much needed.
Yeah, we needed it. Needed a reset here. Kind of put that Oklahoma game past us. Get excited for the rest of Big Ten play. As we get in the meat of our schedule, excited to see what's happening. And yeah, it starts right here with Indiana.
I know. Seriously. I mean, Husker fans got to get blessed by watching Adrian Martinez beat Oklahoma, aforementioned team we just got blood out by. I mean, my word.
Kind of painful.
Couldn't have been a much worse of a bye week for a lot of Nebraska fans, but
down bad.
I know. It is what it's tough out there, but we have a game where we are currently favored, and we're going to talk about it and predict it in this one breakdown. In this, so how this is going to work is we're going to kind of talk about Indiana for a little bit, the strengths and weaknesses of their offense and defense, and then head into the X factors and the things we're looking for in this game. As this game goes, we are now 5.5 point favorites. On some websites, it's as high as 6.5 point favorites. It opened up at 3.5. and is now all the way betted up, 3 or 4 points here. There's a 61.5 over under. So overall, expecting a pretty high scoring affair. It's tough. I mean, even PFF has this power ranked 76th and Indiana 75th. It should be a pretty close one overall. And like I said, this is truly going to define a lot of this season for Nebraska.
Yeah, both of us are bad against the spread though. So, even though we're favored by about 5.5, Nebraska is currently 0-4 against the spread. So bet against Nebraska is what that's saying. But to spice it up, Indiana's 1-3 versus the spread. So two teams that are hard to predict with that spread. So
I mean, like you said, Indiana's coming into the game 3-1. A really rocky, interesting road though for them. Like you said, opening up the year with a win against Illinois, 23-20, in a game where they had a lot of reasons to lose and ended up pulling it out with a dub. It was a pretty ugly one, and then they went on to beat Idaho 35-22, so probably a little bit closer than they would have liked it to be. And then they snuck past Western Kentucky in overtime thanks to some turnovers. I mean, Western Kentucky had them on the ropes. They were down by the goal line.
Like 10.
Yeah, they were up double digits and were driving towards the goal line in the red zone, and then threw a pick, and Indiana went down and scored almost immediately. So and then they end up losing in overtime on it, and they missed a game and Western Kentucky missed a game-winning field goal.
Yeah, Western Kentucky had every chance to win that game.
Yeah, they were looking like Nebraska of the past few years in that one, and then Indiana ended up losing to Cincinnati, and even though they lost by 21, they were in it in that game against Cincinnati almost the whole way through, and looked really competitive and showed a lot of probably positive signs with a lot of takeaways. So been an interesting road so far for Indiana throughout the start of this year, heading into this Nebraska game. So as for their offense, what are your thoughts kind of on this team and where you're at? Obviously last year they've seen a lot of improvement, being 0-9 and 2-10, or 2-10 overall and 0-9 in the Big Ten. And now this offense looks improved with Connor Bazelak coming in from Missouri.
Yeah, he's a really interesting case. He leads the country in passing attempts with 202. He's 108 for 202 for 1,171 yards. Yeah, that's a lot of passes. That's a lot of passes. It's only been 4 games, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He looks really good on the rollouts. His passings here or there. I mean, obviously he's just a little bit over 50% passing, obviously on the 202 passing attempts. So he definitely misses some passes, but he's also pretty athletic. It looks pretty good on the run, and I think it'll create some problems. A lot like Dylan Gabriel in that sense. I'd say similar on the running, not in the passing sense as much,
sure,
but on the running ability.
Well, I mean, crazy enough, Nebraska's played 3 of the top 4 quarterbacks in the country in pass attempts. Bazelak's number 1, Van Treese is number 2, and Helinski from Northwestern is number 4. So it's like, what in the world? We're playing these teams who are just airing it out like crazy this year. Yeah, so I mean, at least we got that going for us, that we have some experience against teams that want to throw the ball 50 plus times. But it is going to be interesting.
I'd want to throw the ball 50 plus times if I was playing Nebraska too.
Fair enough. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Bazelak's pretty interesting. Like, he is prone for mistakes, but like you said, he has that cannon arm. And he definitely relies on it. And like truly, he does have a lot of reminiscence of like a Tommy Armstrong with how he plays. He loves to just heave it up there, and he has no problem throwing off his back foot and trusting his arm strength. He's definitely fun to watch.
Yeah, when he's on, he's on. And if he has time in the pocket, he looks pretty good. If he's rushed, there's definitely some errant throws, but yeah, he tries to fit in some tight windows, and yeah, he likes to sling the ball. The good news is their offensive line is similar to ours, maybe not quite as bad, but not amazing. They have some weaknesses. Their center and their tackle both have been rough, according to PFF, and just your eyes as well.
I mean, yeah,
you don't need any PFF grades to see how bad they are. Yeah, so so there's definite potential there for our defensive line to maybe get some pressure, which would, again, that would really help our case against Connor Bazelak. And I think if we could do that, we could see some success today.
Yeah,
this week.
Yeah, I agree. Like truly, it was a really mixed bag for how the teams have attacked them. I mean, Cincinnati and Western Kentucky both had a lot of pressure. How Indiana's been scheming to attack it is by rolling Bazelak out of the pocket, and he's been dangerous when on the roll, especially to the right. But I mean, regardless, again, he's been hurried, and that's been causing incompletions. And like we said, he still likes to even throw it in there, even when he is not pressured sometimes. So it is fascinating. There's going to be some opportunities, like you said, to get to the quarterback, but it definitely seems like their offensive line is legitimately questionable and comparably bad to ours.
They might not have quite as many weak links, but still have plenty weak links for us to kind of attack here. Yeah, their running back's been solid too. Sean Shivers, he's had 89 carries, 320 yards, and 3 touchdowns this year. He's maybe not in the top tier of Big Ten running backs we're going to see this year, but definitely a very serviceable Big Ten back. And, the offensive line might be bringing him down a little bit too, but he's looked solid, scored some touchdowns, looked good in the red zone. So he'll create some problems.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they have a pretty solid overall duo with Josh Henderson as well there. I think that was kind of the theme for the Hoosiers offense, is like they have a lot of reliable, solid pieces there.
Yeah.
And, right now Shivers is averaging 4.6 to carry on the season, and Josh Henderson's averaging 4.4. They just both seem to be able to do exactly what they need them to do, but Shivers definitely presents more upside, I think, when it comes to the big plays on the year than Henderson does. But they're both pretty bruiser backs that like to be physical.
Yeah, agreed. And going on with, they just have a lot of solid options with their wide receivers. It's the same way, kind of do it by committee. The top guy is Cam Camper, who has 33 receptions, 418 yards, and a touchdown. But they do have multiple guys. Matthews too, who's
DJ Matthews.
Solid guys who are just good Big Ten players. Again, that will make some plays.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Camper's probably the biggest threat. Outside of that, it's just a bunch of, reliable guys. I mean, Matthews and Camper are only two guys that have over 100 yards, but their tight end, AJ Barner, has 10 receptions for 98, and he's looked solid as well, a guy who can get those first downs for him. I mean, again, it's a respectable weapons core, but it's really no one that you're like shaking, like, oh no, like they're going to take us out. Obviously, I think Bazelak overall and his arm talent was what really has stood out on the film for Indiana.
But when you add them all together, it makes a formidable offense. And then on the defensive side, it's where it gets interesting. It feels like there's a little bit more of some weaknesses. Maybe on the offense, it's a couple of their offensive linemen. Here, their defense seems to be their secondary. They kind of got burned pretty much most of their games. A lot of big plays. Cincinnati, they scored on a lot of big plays for them.
It was like that was basically
Western
all
Kentucky,
of Cincinnati's drives. Yeah,
Western
same with
Kentucky. Yeah, so if you have time to air it out against this team, you are going to make big plays and score a lot of touchdowns. That's the point of attack for us this next week.
I mean, no doubt. I think it's interesting because, like, what immediately stood out, especially in that Cincinnati game, was how great that front seven played and how efficient of tacklers they were in that game. But when you go back and watch some of their other games, it was not the same story. And so it's going to be really interesting to see exactly which IU defense ends up showing up, because genuinely, it looked like a completely different team against Cincinnati, especially on the ground. They only gave up 40 rushing yards in Cincinnati, where they were getting absolutely torched by Chase Brown and by Western Kentucky. Chase Brown had 36 carries for 199 yards, 5.5 a carry in that game. And then Kyle Robichaud had like 9.6 a carry on him, which in the Western Kentucky game. But then since they only had 1.3 carry and 40 yards total.
And that's where Josh and I started on the film, like really sitting down, besides just casually watching on Saturday. And we were concerned. We were like, man, their front seven looks really good. Their linebackers hit hard, by the way, just in all the games. Western Kentucky even, they had some plays where they just lit some guys up.
It is impressive. I mean, definitely like Tom Allen's got that defense so much better than it was last year. And obviously, again, having a quarterback that can actually put some points on the board versus what happened last season obviously matters too. But the difference was probably tackling, just overall the winning the battle up front. Like, do you feel like that a fluke, or is that the defense we're going to see in this game?
It is interesting. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think they definitely are improving, but I still think Anthony Grant can get his. The problem is their front seven is solid, and then our offensive line, well, everybody here knows our offensive line has been awful this season. I mean, it's been awful the last few seasons, if we're honest, but this year worse than recent history. So that it's definitely kind of that's what you're trying to weigh.
It's probably somewhere in the middle, but man, I am fairly convinced that maybe they started to figure out something there in that Cincinnati game with a little bit of different personnel or some different packages, because they looked fantastic throughout that whole game. So I am interested. I mean, again, that defense has some players in the front seven who are really respectable. I mean, like Cam Jones has been incredibly impressive up front, number 4 linebacker, and he's just so good at the point of attack. And he has stuck some kids at the line of scrimmage, just absolutely smoked some guys, like in the 1 and 2 gaps, like just really impressive hits, like things that we do not see at Nebraska. And number 92, Alfred Bryant up front, he has been a stud when it comes to just stuffing gaps and at the point of the attack too. So I think both of those guys were incredibly impressive on film and jumped off to me like immediately, like, man, these guys are playmakers and like legitimately are like can move the needle up front. So I am worried. Like, I don't think there's gonna be some cakewalk at all when it comes to moving the ball against this defense. So I'm right with you. So with that said, I think we can kind of move on to some of the X factors here and actually talk about some of these matchups specifically. So maybe we can start here on the defensive side for Indiana and just come to the X factors here. I mean, like you said, the question for me up first in the X factors is, can we expose these cornerbacks? Can we attack downfield like what we saw Cincinnati and like Western Kentucky do so incredibly well in those games? And I mean, Trey Palmer should have some chances.
I agree. They're not very good in zones. They run a lot of man, but the problem is their man isn't that good either. Their secondary has not looked good, so I think there's some definite opportunities. We saw Western Kentucky run switch routes and
that was really working. Oh my word, some blown coverages on those.
Yeah, there was just a lot of. I mean, there was a lot of scores on blown coverage where
zone.
just singling out the safety or their zone. It looks like they really couldn't figure out just what to run because both were not doing well for them. So
no, I'm with you. I mean, and it was kind of all over the field too. Like some of them were seam routes, and like we saw them move the pocket pretty well and then attack down the seam. And I mean, I think we could be seeing that with Trey Palmer today on some like deep crossing post routes or something like that, where you just roll out Casey and let him throw one. Like there's some opportunity there in this game for a big time play like that. I mean, Palmer right now, he has 28 receptions through 4 games, which is actually the most ever by a Husker. And I think Palmer can keep it up in a game like this too.
Yeah, I think this could be a very big game for him. They weren't like cloud covering anybody. And that goes to show in the Cincinnati game where one of the wide receiver had 185 yards.
Gosh, yeah, Tyler Scott had 10 receptions for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns.
So yeah, you can definitely eat on this defense. Again, they chose a lot of times to go man coverage, and they paid the price. And I hope that they continue to do that because again, if we can just give our guys time, I think that we will get open.
Like you said, anytime a quarterback seemed to have just a few extra seconds there, they were throwing downfield and finding success. So the secondary is just not good enough to withstand bad pass rush. And so I think there's going to be some opportunities for this offense as long as we can even just be respectable when it comes to pass block and pass protection. So in the same sense, I think, like you said, how do we establish the run? What are the narratives here for Anthony Grant and company?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think just the best blocking schemes that we got, but I think Grant will still be able to get his. I know that their front seven is good. It's not quite as good as Oklahoma, and we were still able to get some yards out of that. So I think that there's still a really good chance that we'll be able to get some. I'd actually really like to establish the run here in the first half and then start airing it out in the second half. I think I'd like a more conservative game plan to start the game, and then as the second half looms, just start airing it out. And then
that's fair. I mean,
because I think Grant getting to the second level and maybe start bruising some of those safeties and those guys, making them get some of those tackle work in, and then setting that up for really good passing success, I think could be.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, since we lost AJ Allen last week, so now the question is, like, is Anthony Grant just going to play every dang snap?
I think it'll be Gabe as well.
But I mean, Gabe Irvin was listed as the backup now on the new depth chart, so that comes into play. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, at this point, though, Gabe Irvin's a pretty massive downgrade from AJ Allen from what we've seen from Gabe. Obviously, last game was his best performance by far. It wasn't really close. He was pretty terrible in the first 3 games. Yeah. So hopefully Gabe's getting back in the rhythm after his terrible injury last season, and he can start showing that burst in power that he had, in the few snaps he got early last year before he got hurt. But I mean, that is to be decided. I'm just not convinced that we're going to win that battle up front. So that's going to be interesting to see for sure.
But we could just do what Illinois did with Chase Brown, just hand Anthony Grant the ball 36 times.
I mean, just force it to happen. I mean, seriously,
well, Anthony Grant, they don't have any pass, so they have to.
I mean, the question is, is Chase Brown better than Anthony Grant? I don't know, but Brown had some beautiful runs in that game, though, to say the least. So, I mean, similarly in that regard is our offensive line play. I mean, the X factor is which offensive line is. I mean, can we see any improvement at all at this point?
I hope so. I hope so.
Ethan Piper's going to be starting at left guard, replacing Banks. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how he plays. He had about 10 starts in his career or so, and has been okay. That's generous at best. So, I mean, do you feel like we could see improvement on the offensive line after the bye week like this, or is it just scraping for hope at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'd like to see transfer Anthony Hunter get some more snaps just to see.
I mean, we seriously, at some point, we
haven't seen him on the field.
How bad does Ben Hart have to be?
Yeah, so
or Corcoran.
Yeah, so love to see any switch that we have there. Again, anybody, just start pulling guys off campus. Like, hey, you look kind of big. Like, let's see if you work. Anything to fill up some of these spots at this point. Kevin Williams apparently has been kind of banged up too, so that's why we haven't seen him play as much as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's an X factor in the sense of, like, will Ethan Piper be enough to move the needle up front for us to win some of those battles? Hard to argue that it's going to make a huge difference, but I guess at this point, you never know. So on the other side, I think the X factor here is, can we expose their pass rush? And this is a game where you can kind of unleash our, inconsistent pass rush against their pretty awful offensive line.
Hopefully this can be a game where O'Shawn and Garrett and company, Caleb Tanner and all them can step up. We really need a pass rush here. We need to get Bazelak uncomfortable. And again, if we can be successful in that, this offense shown that it can be kind of spurty and stagnant at times. I mean, they threw out it against plenty of times against Western Kentucky and Idaho and these other teams. Like, we should be able to stop them a little bit. Obviously,
I'm going to be worried.
Needs a rebound bad. We cannot be giving up 500 plus yards for a third straight game, especially against Indiana.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, what we're going to talk about here in a second with things we want to see, we're going to be talking about a new defensive coordinator and these things. But I'm with you. I mean, okay, let's just talk about some things that we need to see in this game, or we want to see in this game moving forward. Obviously, besides a big time win.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing is the defensive changes. Bill Bush coming in as defensive coordinator, replacing Eric Shenander. We've had the bye week now, so hopefully installing some of these things this week or this past, week and a half now. I mean, how much different could you possibly expect this defense to look? There have been a few potential differences with some of the depth chart, some of the second stringers, but outside of that, what are you expecting to see in the differences here?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just, again, a change in mentality, a little bit of philosophy, what we're calling, what what Bill Bush thinks the strengths are compared to what Shenander thought the strengths are.
Yeah.
Again, our linebacker core is something that we also just as much with the offensive line need to start shaking up and trying new things. Moving Kolarevich in the inside, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Omar Brown's now listed as the backup nickel back to Isaac Gifford. So Kolarevich
Yes.
going to be moving inside to inside linebacker now.
And he
full
looked
time.
better there. He looked better
it's
there
going to
when
be
we
like
saw there.
him or Henrich or Hausman there now. And fun fact for you, Nick Henrich is currently the lowest graded of all 347 linebackers in college football on PFF who have played at least 100 snaps.
Can you say that again for the people in the back who still think Nick Henrich is good?
It's been tough out there. Obviously, it hasn't been too much better for anyone else. I mean, Reimer's 312th and Ernest Hausman's 255th. So, I mean, we don't have a linebacker in the
great.
top 250.
But I'd rather see Hausman out there literally than both of them just because he's a freshman and has upside.
Fair enough.
Again, like Reimer and Henderson been
Yeah, I mean, Hausman
bad.
at least gets to the flats. He misses the tackles, but he gets there.
Yeah, again,
And he might blow one or two coverages per game.
yeah, but at least we see that he has some athleticism.
Agreed. I mean, in the long term, he's going to be, I think he's
and
going to
some
be a
better
pretty solid
instincts.
player.
Yeah, I think he can be too. He has some, just better football instincts than
I agree.
Henrich and Reimer at this point.
And much more power.
Can't emphasize how much we knew Nick Henrich was bad last season. We didn't really want to see him play this year. But, Reimer's been disappointing. Like, Reimer's been really disappointing this year.
So disappointing. I mean, he's probably the biggest, like, I would say flop for this year. Where we thought maybe he could be like, a very good Big Ten linebacker this season, and just has so not been the case in any sense.
Yeah, it's been a big bummer.
Yeah, so that's gonna be interesting. I think some of the other changes, basically was just the only other difference was that cornerback, and this is probably something we need to talk about, is just that second cornerback position, which we talked about in our video last week. We need to find that guy there. I mean, at this
Besides
point,
Quinn Newsome, we need someone else.
yeah, it's been tragic, kind of all over the place for basically everyone. Tommy Hill at the beginning of the year looked so good, and these last two games have just been absolutely terrible.
Horrible.
And so, interestingly enough, Malcolm Hartzog, who's a true freshman now, is listed as one of the two deep there with Braxton Clark. So Brandon Moore is one of the backups, and then Braxton Clark's there, and Malcolm Hartzog. So he played 7 snaps in the Oklahoma game. Apparently, coaches like what they saw. So keep your eye out on that to see if he ends up seeing the field this game at all. So with that said, let's get into our predictions here and just talk about what we actually think is going to happen. Caleb, where are you at with this game? What are your thoughts? The predictions, the line, obviously, like we said, 5.5 opened at 3.5, and it's a 61.5 point over under right now. Where are you at?
Well, I'm not convinced we're going to win. I was pretty convinced at the start of the year that this was our easiest Big Ten game.
Yeah.
And, just with how bad we've been, it makes me a lot more nervous.
And Indiana looking competitive.
Yeah, than I wanted it to be this year. I thought for sure it'd be like, oh, they're for sure the worst Big Ten team. They have a Big Ten win. That's more than we can say at this point. And I'm nervous. I'm going to pick us to win 31-28. Not maybe because I believe it wholheartedly, but because we just need it. So I'm speaking it into existence.
Wow.
We win 31-28.
Which matchups do you feel excited about? I would assume the passing game you feel pretty excited about overall.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Chances.
But again, our offensive line is just, it's tragic. I'd rather have traffic cones out there. So besides, Astrid Nixon's been
obviously I'm with you. I mean, the question mark is like, we made Kyle Van Treese and Ryan Helinski look like Tom Brady out there.
That's what's
and now
terrifying.
we have another quarterback who's almost exactly like them, but might have more arm talent.
The good news is their offensive line is bad, worse than the rest of the Big Ten
worse than even Georgia Southern. Yeah.
So that's good. There's just so many hurdles to overcome. Obviously, just rooting for Mickey. Obviously, this would be a big win for him and momentum.
Yeah.
It's just our defense and our offensive line are so bad.
I know.
I mean, Scott Frost talked about, Mike Riley leaving him nothing. I mean, Scott Frost has literally
like we said
left
last week. I mean, Frost's best players were all the Riley guys, but I mean,
it's rough. It's rough right now.
I'm with you where I've been back and forth on this game all week. I generally have I'm going to pick Indiana. Nope. I think I'm going to pick Nebraska. You look at where Illinois is going to be a solid team this year.
Yeah.
Northwestern came out, beat them week 1. And I'm like, oh no. Like, if they're beating Illinois off the rip here, I'm already worried. And then, the team we lose to, Northwestern, goes on to lose to Duke, Southern Illinois, and Miami, Ohio. They're 1-3 with 2 losses to Southern Illinois and Miami, Ohio.
ESPN's making jokes about it's Nebraska curse, bro. Like, Oklahoma loses the week. Every team's lost the week after they beat us. It's
no.
Yeah, we're a joke. It's tough.
That is really actually
I saw
real
like
bad.
a Diary of the
That's
Wimpy
tough.
Kid. It's like Nebraska when it's like the cheese touch. And like it's Georgia Southern, Oklahoma, them running away.
My first thought, wow, you read my mind.
No, I just saw it was hilarious. I'm like, oh, that's a great reference.
I mean, yeah, so those are the things where it's just like, man, I mean, as we've continued to see that we're just not there right now. The question is, I mean, for me is, we couldn't have really gotten worse any worse on the defense.
No.
You have a bye week, which was needed so badly at this point to give us some time to get some reps in, more tackling and practice. So hopefully all of these things can help improve this defense and give us a shot to improve at this point. Like you were talking about, though, I am really excited about the offensive matchup. I think this most likely will probably
we should be able to score points.
I think it's going to hit the over of 61.5. I like my chances there. It's a night game for Nebraska. Obviously did not work out well for us against Georgia Southern, but in Nebraska's history, night games have been a pretty nice thing. I mean, we're 48-10 all time in night games and 7-2 against Big Ten teams on homecoming nights. So I mean, hey, lock in the dub, guaranteed. So with all of that said, I'm gonna buy in to the matchups here. I think overall we're gonna have enough success on the ground that'll allow us to take shots downfield in the passing game. And I do think we're gonna have at least a little bit of improvement on the defensive side with the bye week there, more practice, a change from Shenander. I think overall this team's ready to play. Mickey Joseph will have this team excited to play in a night game like this. The matchup downfield, I mean, Casey Thompson is legit. He's really good. And we had the better quarterback in this game. We had the best receiver in this game. We had the best running back in this game. And it's possible we have the best defensive player in this game as well. So it's like overall, I think we have the personnel advantages. It just comes down to whether or not, I mean, Indiana's been winning these close games, and in Nebraska's history, we've never won these close games, and Indiana has relied on turnovers. So I think it's really interesting. It's really close. But I'm going to take us in a little bit of a barn burner in this game. We haven't had like a full-blown barn burner win in a minute, I think. It's been a while. So I'm with you. It's going to be a close one, but I'm going to take us, I mean, I'm thinking like a 35-31 type of win here for Nebraska, 4-point win. I definitely feel more comfortable with the points and Indiana's plus 6.5.
Yeah, I'd take Indiana too.
But I do like our odds to pull this game out in a wild one at home. It's gonna be crazy. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, or hopefully this turns into the Northwestern game from last year.
Oh,
or we just
run them out of town.
It's just 57-7. Like that'd be great. Please.
Please. Oh, how good would that feel?
But I don't think that's what's gonna happen. So
yeah, exactly. So obviously drop all your comments down below. We'd love to see what you guys have to say. Hit the subscribe button because a lot of you guys who watch these videos aren't subscribed. So what's up with that? And give us your best predictions for this game and the X factors that you are looking for and your expectations for Mickey Joseph rest of season, because obviously a lot hinges on what happens in this game. There could be some gloom and doom if we end up losing this one. So anyway, drop your comments down below, like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you guys really enjoyed it. But as always, guys, I'm Josh. That was Caleb. This has been Backseat Sports, and we will see you next time.
Go Big Red.